What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is another Chance Encounter. Hey, what's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg. I'm a commercial real estate guy. I'm from the internet. We're seeing more properties like this being built in front of a house that's going to be torn down soon. I understand that there are power lines that are getting kind of close. What's up again? This is Dan Fredenberg, and that there is a commercial real estate building. I'm joined today with Joseph Huang. How are you doing today, Joseph?
Great, Dan.
Awesome, awesome. I got some great news for you, Joseph. You might not know this, but today we are joined by my very favorite member of the audience. And why is my favorite member of the audience here? Is because this is a chance encounter where I interview commercial real estate people. That means deal sponsors, that means investors, that means syndicators, operators, construction people. And you may ask yourself, why would you do that? And the answer is if you've ever heard of an off market deal, the private kind that you're not allowed to publicly discuss, it's also called a 506B syndication. Well, you should also know that you need documentation of your prior substantive relationship, or else the SEC will get ants in its pants, and you don't want that. So that's what we're doing here is we're finding out what exactly my guest is doing in this business, how they can be assisted and help each other. And the benefit to you is you will learn more effectively how to communicate on the subject of commercial real estate deals while you're learning how he fits into them. But Joseph, before we start talking too much about real estate itself, do you want to say a thing or two about yourself?
Yeah, I've been working on real estate now for over 20 years. Started with multifamily, actually residential, got into multifamily. Didn't really do a whole lot of flips, was mostly just buy and hold. In the course of that, decided to go into commercial. And the last 5 years, really just been focusing on primarily mixed use, industrial, and a lot of retail. In fact, a lot of people are not really buying retail the last several years and even now. And so for me, I think of it as a great way to have an asset class that I do understand, that I do like, mainly because there aren't a lot of competition and we're able to buy it right at good price that we can add value to.
I love that answer. And that's going to go straight into the motivations piece. Before we do that, I got to say, but wait, check your rate. Now, Joseph, I know that this is an unusual question, but I don't know if you can see through the camera and down there in the user's device, but there might be this hideous subscribe button, and maybe they should, it's okay. Yeah, it's a stupid joke. But anyway, I do it in every episode before I talk
Okay.
about the distinct motivations. And there are five of them on this show that I use. And the reason why I came to these five different motivations is because after talking to literally hundreds of different people involved in this space, I found that they fit pretty neatly into these five categories, even though we have our own unique why. But at the same time, we need to discuss these motivations because these deals take months to close, they take years to go full cycle, and we need to find out what's going to keep somebody from throwing in the towel when the going gets tough. And the first one of the five is preservation of purchasing power. What's that? Well, some people, they are job optional. They don't need to have a full-time job or anything like that. And the way that they pay their bills is from the proceeds of ownership. In other words, they've got a portfolio of assets, and the money that comes, the profits that come from owning it, that is how they pay their bills. And if you're in that situation, you might wonder, well, why bother making another acquisition? Why take on those risks and those hassles? And there are a couple scenarios where that is likely to happen. One is if inflation is rearing its ugly head, then it's going to make sense because of it's going to eat away from the purchasing power of your cash flow. So it's going to be time to make a new acquisition. The other time is when you can buy at a steep discount because of an asset crash or because of distress in the property, and then it's going to be time to pick up another one. And I'm not that far into my real estate career where I'm independent and preservation of purchasing power is is my main priority. More specifically for me, it's trading time directly for wealth instead of high salary, high wages, and high taxes as a result. My background is in technology, and specifically, it's the CRM and online funnels accepting credit card transactions and emailing 5 million to 7 million emails a month. And I was doing that since 2014 after I was phasing down my CRM agency. I was doing it for a firm in Ohio that was doing 10 single family house transactions every single month, like clockwork, before they hired me on. And when I saw how much my boss was making and I saw what my tax burden was, it hit me that I really should be pivoting where I'm rewarded for my effort in the form of deployed capital, these little slivers of equity with a bunch of different deals, rather than trying to increase my income. So that's what I'm up to. That's a little too subtle for a lot of youngsters. A lot of youngsters, they're more inclined, they want to get some more time freedom in their life. And that might mean that they hustle like crazy for now and then retire a little bit early. But there are other variations as well. Some people, they just want to work fewer months per year or fewer weeks per month, something like that. And this is really their motivation. Now, of course, one thing that's pretty common, people who choose this as their motivation, they frequently think that people secretly have this as their motivation and they're trying to hide it. But I assure you, there are many people out there where that is not a motivation at all. One great example is people who are fueled by ambition. They want to buy their entire hometown. They want that generational wealth. They want to make sure that their great grandchildren will never have to hold a day job. And that's why they are hustling like crazy. And even though these guys are vilified sometimes in some circles, the fact is these guys make great additions to GP teams because they're going to keep hustling into their 90s because they're motivated sufficiently. Now, the other group that is also going to be hustling into their old age is people who have picked a sector of society. Maybe it's animals, maybe it's the environment. Who knows what it is, but the fact is, if you want to make a really big impact, there's a financial component to it. And some people have chosen commercial real estate acquisitions as the way to help all those people that they've decided to focus on. So, Joseph, of those five different motivations, what combination of those do you think describes you best?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of motivation to doing real estate, aside from, tax benefit and depreciation. For me, it's, getting out of a job, right? Having the freedom and time for you to not just enjoy with your friends and family, but really having options, right? And that's freedom, and that's something that I've always attained to. So that's really for me, it's the key motivation. But other than that, the ability to make impact in other people's lives, right? Even through commercial real estate, the decisions you make, affect the people's livelihood, right? In the case of retail, whether you pick one tenant or not over the others, at your center may affect the overall synergy of, that property and that community as well too, right?
Mhm.
If you go with, say, a liquor store versus, a nightclub some sort, those have impact on the community, right? And it may very well be a good fit for a particular demographics or location, but those are decisions that I make that could actually impact. And have knowing that, I think it's definitely something that I take seriously in my
Wow,
professional
that's
pursuit.
really interesting. I'm really glad that you said that because I didn't think of that sort of vetting when you're community building. It's having that decision on who you're actually going to allow. That's fantastic. But of course, when we're talking about motivation, it's pretty easy to seem overly optimistic, even though real estate's a business, and just like every business, there are plenty of risks involved. And if you've ever been involved in a 506B deal, one of these private deals that you're not supposed to discuss publicly, then you should have been forced to fill out this really invasive questionnaire, this financial questionnaire, also sometimes called a suitability questionnaire. And when I was filling out one of those for an investment, I got to the question that was asking about tolerance for risk, and I felt that it lacked utility. I thought that it didn't really give me any information that I could use and basically take to the bank to make sure that somebody understands the risks involved. So I made my own question that is a fill in the blanks one. And it is. There are many popular investment asset classes, but I think blank is too risky. So, Joseph, it could be inside real estate, it could be outside real estate. What's too risky for you to invest in?
For me, multifamily right now is not necessarily my choice. I mean, I started in that asset, and many people think retail could be risky as well too. I think it's definitely situational, right? Not all retail is created equal. It really comes down to how you buy it, right? The demographics, the location, accessibility to the property. So, you know, property that you don't doesn't have the right fit to those criteria, I think for me is the most risky.
I love that answer. And, times changes. Like sometimes one asset class is great, and then a big, huge crowd, oversaturates it, and it's not that good anymore. So I love that answer. But the next question, though, I was actually tempted to, I used to avoid this question. I didn't include it originally in the Chance Encounter interviews because I knew that some people, they are in this business, but they're more like the public relations, the face of the business, and they're not going to really enjoy dealing with numbers the way that the spreadsheet jockeys, the underwriters, really get that motivation to dig in. And of course, it takes all types to make this industry work. And an underwriter will look at all the different popular deal metrics and say they're all important. What are you talking about? You can't really pick favorites with them. But everybody will have some where they use it to do the initial vetting of a deal to see if it's worth doing a deep dive. And for anybody in the audience who's listening but not watching, I read out all of these ones on this slide. Of course, there are other metrics that other people rely on that are not here, but I'll read out the ones that I have here, which are cash on cash, IRR, cost per door, NOI, which is net operating income, the going in cap rate, which really is talking about what's the difference between what people are paying for that cap rate in that area right now versus what you're able to purchase at. Then there's the loan interest rate, which is especially coming up when people assume loans. Then we have occupancy, which is the inverse of vacancy, but essentially the same thing. We have average income where the property is located. We have the amortization period of the loan, which is important to a lot of deals. The difference between the market versus the in-place rents, the population growth where the property is located, the sponsor record, which means how many deals have gone full cycle and how many are still on the go, the waterfall split or exit strategy, which means what happens after your capital has been returned to you. And then I have DSCR, which is the debt service coverage ratio, which means how much of the revenue from rent is going out the door immediately just to pay for the loan and things like that. So Joseph, you're free to mention another one if you have a metric that you depend on more, but maybe a top three or something like that. Which are the ones that you focus in on first?
I mean, these are all very important criteria to look for in retail, especially for me. It's the demographics, the location. I mean, retail, what in commercial real estate, just like any real estate, location is key. And so for us, that means population growth. That means, the what is the average income, right? And you want to make sure that you going in on buying a property that is in a good area, uh, well located, but you also want to be in an area that is growing, right? For me, also occupancy level is also important too, because then if you buy something 100%, there's not much more to do, right? If you're a value add like me, you want to be able to add value to leasing up these vacancies, but also, other areas like in-place market rent. You could buy something that's 100% occupied, but maybe they're below market. So there's way for us to add value to those means.
I love that answer. I'm just eating it up like a delicious subscribe sandwich. It's very subtle, that little thing here. It's my reminder that it's time to bring out the Dan Does Deals Commercial Core Competency Cube with the 6 core roles in a commercial real estate deal. And the reason why I go through this in every episode is because I'm trying to make sure that you learn how to effectively communicate on the subject of commercial real estate deals and the teams that are on it. But more importantly, it's so that you understand how my guest fits into these deals. And if you look at this cube and you're like, wow, I really need one of those. Well, the good news, it's absolutely free. You go to dandoesdeals.com. There's this big prominent button for you to click on, download it, and print it out. And so you can practice describing these different roles the way that I do in these chance encounters. And so, and like a dummy, I neglect to ask for your contact information. That's the cardinal sin of marketing, is to give away your freebie and not ask for contact information. But I do it anyway, just because it's really, really important that you can learn how to talk about this stuff with the people you work with. So let's get started. Repositioners are the most public facing people in general in these different deals because they're acquisitions people. They're looking for deals, they're looking at a bunch of different properties before they figure out one that is really worth acquiring, and they have to do a whole whack of paperwork before they get started. What's that paperwork? Well, the fancy word for it is underwriting the deal, which means they're doing the math, they're doing the arithmetic, they're figuring out, first of all, is this property even making the amount of money that the seller slash broker claims it is? Because the repositioner's next job, though, is they're really doing this number crunching and the strategizing to figure out how can they change the property and how it's run, the business itself, to find more upside. And the most peculiar side of being a repositioner is you have to have a lot of relationships with financiers. So the financier relations part is a key part in everybody's business, because if you can secure cheaper money, aka a lower cost loan, that's going to go straight to the profitability of the building. So when they're talking to these financiers who only deal with paper and money and the owners of the actual companies, that's why you need to know a lot of them, is to find those simpler deals for those LPs, those banks, those lenders, and whatnot. But the next place the repositioner is going to take a look at is the operations piece of the puzzle. They're going to make sure that those Benjamins aren't going down the toilet. But of course, there's more to operations than unclogging toilets and collecting rent and mowing lawns, or possibly even shoveling snow if you're like me. But the contribution that I do when I'm on a GP team to operations, there are a few of them. One of them is automation and web-based assets. I can do that instead of hiring it out. And of course, one of the things to understand, especially if you're talking about bigger deals, like where it's like 100 units or more, you're probably going to be outsourcing property management to a third party. And so how do you make yourself particularly useful? Well, if you understand that the enemy in real estate is vacancy, in other words, empty units, then somebody on your GP team, like me, should have some serious marketing chops, just so that they can get those units filled even when your property manager is dropping the ball. So that's the operations piece. But there's only so much you can do to optimize operations. So the next place the repositioner frequently looks is to get a contractor team involved to renovate the property, make it a nicer place so that residents are happy to pay more in rent than the previous ones for this nicer location. But of course, if only it were that simple. You can spend endless amounts of money on contractors and upgrades. You can go ahead and gold plate the toilets if that's what you really want to do, but you're not going to get a great return on investment. And so the other thing you need to make sure of is that the contractors keep the schedule. They're not dragging their heels. They're not using substandard materials. And if you're like me, see, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm from the internet. So that means I need locals. I need boots on the ground, somebody who can be there in an hour or two, because that will not be me. I'd still be stuck at an airport in a few hours. So we need somebody who can be there at a moment's notice within a couple hours to take a look and make sure the contractors are keeping the schedule, make sure the operations team, the property management team, they're actually not sloughing photographs and giving false information, all that kind of stuff. And then that way you can make sure things are running smoothly. But let's do a hypothetical for a second. You decide with your group of friends to become a repositioner. Let's say you're an engineer or an attorney or a physician, something like that. And you get the idea in your head, hey, I know how to buy a house. I put down my down payment and I get a loan for the rest. So you decide, I want a piece of that 350 unit apartment complex that's just down the street. Well, when you turn around to the financiers and you say, hey, my friends and I want to buy this 350 unit apartment complex, but we need tens of millions of dollars to pull that off. You don't have, I don't know, say tens of millions of dollars you want to lend us, do you? Well, there's one piece of the puzzle that I haven't mentioned yet, and if you're in a guru or mentorship program or something like that, I encourage you to listen very carefully to this next part because they tend to gloss over this one. The financier is going to ask, who's your sponsor? Who's your KP? What's that all about? The key principal or sponsor, that's the person who already owns a similar asset. So the bank is going to need somebody in the fold who already owns, say, a 350 unit apartment complex before they'll lend you the money to buy a 350 unit apartment complex because they need the assurance that you're not going to run it into the ground. Because after all, the money they lend you, it comes from their lenders as well. Now, on top of that, you need a certain amount of liquidity amongst the team, and you also need a balance sheet, in other words, the collateral among the GP team of at least the amount of the loan. But if you got all those pieces, you got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So, Joseph, you went into a little bit of detail of your experience already, including being an LP, which is a type of finance here. But in your next deal, which pieces of the puzzle are you likely to contribute?
More like most likely it will be a GP role.
Excellent, excellent. And so you're going to focus on asset management and then also vetting the deal with underwriting and that
Oh
sort of
yeah,
thing.
doing the whole thing, the operations and underwriting it, going into the deal, likely guaranteeing the loan as well,
Mhm.
unless of course we have something creative like seller financing. But even then, that would be something that I would be arranging with the seller. But yeah, there's different aspect of being a GP that being a key principal, on the deal itself, along with that, possibly other co-GP as well.
All right, I love that answer. So let's talk about buy boxes then. So when you're talking about the properties, when commercial real estate people are asking each other, what's your buy box, what's your ideal property, we're asking about three main things first and foremost. The first one's geography. Where is it? Which state, which county, possibly even which neighborhood. For it to be ideal, that's going to be very clear in people's minds. The second one's going to be size. Now, most of my guests are in multifamily, and in multifamily, they go by the number of apartments, the unit count of the property to define the size. And regardless if it's multifamily or other forms of commercial real estate like retail, the reason why it's important to know size is because the type of group that will take over, 10, 15 unit apartment complexes compared to 150, 350 unit apartment complexes or strip centers versus shopping centers, the teams are fundamentally going to be different for those different sizes. So it's definitely going to matter. And of course, some other types of real estate go off of acreage or square footage, but still the same thing remains. Now, the third thing is commonly called class. And I'm not a big fan of that term just because I think it's two completely separate things, which are condition and area. And if you're talking about condition, then we're talking about how old is the building, how beat up is the building, and then what sort of luxuries and amenities are there. Like, is it a really no frills sort of place, or is it a very, very nice place to be? That's the condition. And when you're talking about the area, if it's some sort of residential property, then the school districts where the property is located are going to be very, very important. And in every type of real estate, the crime rate is going to be very important. But going back to that old trope that brokers love to say, location, 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 what they really mean is traffic, traffic, traffic. In other words, how many people are passing by that property every single day? The more it is, the more desirable it's going to be. And speaking of which, the desirability of these two different categories, the area and the condition, it's ranked the same way as in grade school, where you have A plus at the top, then you have A, and then A minus, and then B, and B plus, and so on. So, Joseph, as far as your buy box goes, what's ideal for your next acquisition?
Yeah, sure. I mean, retail, it's all about, like you say, location, but hard corner, it's always most ideal. Traffic signalized corner is most ideal because you got cars just not just passing by it, but the ability to stop there, make the left turn, especially into the property. Visibility is also important, right? You want people to be able to see not just the center itself, but the various tenants that's there, especially if it's going to be a national that want to be seen, right? Whether it's a Starbucks or a Family Dollar, they want to be seen. They want the ability for customer to potentially be able to get in and out very easily, right? Accessibility is going to be key there as well. But yeah, hard corner accessibility, obviously traffic count, ideally 20,000 cars or above at the intersection would be much greater, would be more like 30,000 plus would be most ideal. Other than that, I mean, there's many other criteria we look for, age of the property, deferred maintenance, you want it to be minimal, but if you're going in as a value add, those are the things as a GP that you're going to need to budget for to fix it up and be able to lease it up. But those are some of the criteria I look for in buying a property.
Perfect. So let's talk about people. My favorite part about commercial real estate is because it's a team sport. They have these different distinct roles. Everybody's going to hunker down on one or two of those different key roles in a deal. And the nice thing about it is because of that multifaceted nature of it, people tend to be really eager to make introductions, referrals, and that sort of thing. But at the same time, we all have our own unique skill sets, which makes us better suited to help some people more than others. Me personally, because I'm from the internet, the sponsors and KPs tend to be the people I'm most eager to speak to because they're the ones who are able to do bigger things. And that is where I'm able to make the most disproportionately large difference. So I'm always eager to speak to more sponsors. And then, of course, at the end of the day, this business is about deploying capital. So I'm eager to speak to financiers. And then, of course, in the context of this interview, I need to speak to all of the above because I have to cast a really wide net. So, Joseph, if you have any 506B deals, make sure you don't mention them specifically, especially in the same breath as asking for a financier or an investor. But who is out in the audience that you're most eager to speak to?
Folks that may be looking into investing, maybe their retirement fund into, diversify into different asset class. For us, it's retail. That's value add. We buy center that is well situated in a good demographics, growing, right? Service-based businesses. These are businesses that people will rely upon. Whether um, you know there's an Amazon or not. You're not going to go to Amazon to cut your hair, right? So we rely on good area that have good tenant mix that's going to be there for a long time. And even if they don't, because the way they're situated and because the area is growing, we're going to be able to lease it up to another tenant that may do well in that location. So it's all about track record, right? And we've been able to do that time and time again in different asset class, particularly in retail.
All right, perfect. And so that is the people. So the next question then is how do people reach out? And I'm going to sandbag the conversation for a second and talk about myself. I've got this really distinct last name, makes me really easy to find, especially on LinkedIn, which is the social media platform where I spend most of my time. And of course, I've got some different books on a few different business related subjects that you can find on Amazon.com. But if you are in syndications and investments and whatnot, I do encourage you to use your phone to scan this QR code, which goes to the FAQs page of 506BME. That's the platform where I offer the service of maintaining all the IT and helping you save your documentation of your substantive relationships for these 506B syndications. The idea being is what are you going to do if your laptop falls in the bathtub and the SEC comes a knocking asking for that documentation. So that's something that we like to help people out with. Joseph, if people want to reach out to you, website, social media, phone, email, what are the best ways to reach out?
Yeah, they can reach out to me by going to synergiventures.com or just jh at synergiventures.com. That's SYNERGIZE ventures.com.
All right, perfect. And that brings me to the last part. It's actually not for you, Joseph. It's for you in the audience. It's my public service announcement that I always do. If you've been watching this episode and you've been experiencing searing pains in your eyeballs and like migraine like symptoms, I'm pretty confident it's because of the hideous subscribe button down there that you can get rid of for free. And full disclosure, I want people to click on it because if enough people do, then YouTube will actually start to pay for these videos instead of me. And I think that would be amazing. The trade-off to you, just to be clear, is my videos may show up on your list of suggestions, but you can go ahead and ignore those suggestions because, quite frankly, I just appreciate the fact that you spent this time with me. Just like Joseph, I appreciate you joining me today. This has been great.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it as well.
Awesome. Thanks. Hey there. Are you interested in commercial real estate deals? Would you like to build your network of investors and deal sponsors? Well, the best thing I can do for you is have you appear on a chance encounter interview as featured on dandoesdeals.com. You may know me from 506B or as a top commercial real estate voice on LinkedIn. And if I had to think of the top factors in your success in commercial real estate, my top two would be your network and your ability to effectively explain how deals work with effective communication. The 15-minute chance encounter format, it checks both of those boxes, and they ensure that you can share your private deals with me without the SEC calling it a public solicitation. So hop onto LinkedIn. You can see my name is over here, Dan Friedenberg, and search for my name. And the best way to reach me and book that is to message me through LinkedIn. And don't worry, it doesn't matter if you decided to enter this space just last week or 2 weeks ago, or if it was decades ago. It'll be fun and easy to look good. We're just asking multiple choice questions based on your core competencies you look to contribute, your level of sophistication, all that kind of stuff. So I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye. Make sure you 506B me. Any syndicators, make sure you 506B me.
Hi.
Oh, hey, yeah, here's my code. You got your QR code scanner? Okay, yeah, oh yeah, just hold it right in the square there. Okay, cool. And now you hit open in browser.
Okay.
Okay. Are you already logged into 506BME?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so there's my video. So now I'm already on your watch list. So when you get back to your hotel, you can find out what my core competencies are and my level of sophistication. Sound good?
Yeah.
I love your hat. Real estate's a scam. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
506BME, everybody.